right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast NBA Podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and I'm here once again with my buddy through the miracle of computer time, joined by Dave DeFore. Dave, how's it going?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I gotta say, I thought I was going to do better this year. I thought it was going to be different. I thought I was going to be able to pay attention to football. I did not even make it to week 2.
Are you already out?
I mean, I just don't care. I actually said to myself yesterday, oh, that's right. Football's on today.
So here's the good news, Dave. This is a basketball podcast.
I know.
You don't have to follow the NFL. Me, I sat and watched it all. I had the Red Zone channel on. I watched the network game that was on. I saw some ancient man in Sunday Night Football who was holding the yard markers fall over, and they replayed it like 7 times. And I'm just like, stop showing this old man falling over. It's humiliating. Poor guy. He gets paid probably $80 cash every game just to hold the yardsticks. I ever tell you about the time I worked for Monday Night Football?
What?
No.
So
Monday Night Football, I don't know if that's how they used to do it. I used to know a guy who was a producer for, I guess it was NBC. I can't remember if it was NBC when I did it back then, but like he was a producer, and the way they did it apparently is any city they came to, like they don't have employees. They don't have W-2 employees. They're like, hey, producer, do you know anyone in this city who follows football who we can pay $80 cash in an envelope? And the novelty of working for Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football is cool enough for like, yeah, I'll do it for free. Who cares? And so that's how they did it. So, So there's a Titans game. I can't remember if it's Sunday or Monday night, but primetime broadcast. I'm in the truck, and my job, they give me a pen and some blank pieces of paper, like scratch paper. And they're like, hey, your job is to keep track of like yards after reception. And I'm like, this is how y'all do it? And I'm just watching the game. I get headphones, so I hear the producers. That part's fun. So like I'm hearing the on-air broadcasters. I'm also hearing the producers. And all I'm doing is like, all right, so-and-so caught it and ran 8 yards after the catch. And I'm just eyeballing it. Like I feel like I've been training my whole life for this. I've watched football since I was a kid. So I'm like, I got it. I'm really good at simple arithmetic. Man, like I can add 17 plus 14 instantaneous, whatever, and so it's like all this really remedial math type stuff. And I'm just keeping notes, and I'm like tracking Peyton Manning and the Colts and the receivers like yards after reception. And I was just sitting there like, I can't believe this is how it's done. And like one time it's just like, they're putting up a stat and it's like, how many yards after contact or yards after reception? I'm like 33. They're like, great. They just put it up there. It doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. It's like, that's, and I know like this was, I can't remember the exact year, but this was, I think, before just like online stats were ubiquitous and you could just like track everything. Right. So maybe it's different now and you have spotters, but I was like,
I think this is probably all done digitally now.
Yeah, I would think so. But still, it was very funny where it's just like,
this sounds like this happened in like the 70s.
No, yeah. And it was like 10 years ago. Yeah. It wasn't the 70s. It was just like, here's a piece of paper. Here's 4 $20 bills. Thanks for coming. You're now a part of $1 billion broadcast.
Pro wrestling used to kind of work like this too. The WWF comes to town, or WWE. And now I don't know if they still do this because I'm out of the business, but they would come to town, or they would be like, I was in Richmond, or they would be in DC, and we would run up, and they'd pay you $25 to be an extra. So, The Rock and Stone Cold get into a big fight and they have security come out, and security, wow, that guy really knows how to take a Stone Cold stunner. Well, that was because it was me.
Yeah,
right. Like
and you got paid. You got $25. Yeah,
$25. You throw on a black. Bring your own black polo and black pants if you're smart. If you actually want to do it, you bring your gear. A lot of guys would show up with their wrestling gear, like that was going to be useful, and it's like, no, buddy, no. You're just trying to get into funny
where like the WWE and or NBC and or the NFL is just paying you in petty cash under the table.
Yeah,
where it's like, yeah, here's some money.
It's like incidentals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's some food money. And really what it was Denny's money. If you know anything about wrestling, like we keep Denny's in business.
That's great. What were we talking about? Oh, you didn't watch football. I watched
I
football. It's
didn't
fun.
watch football.
Let's talk about the NBA then.
Yeah.
Today's show, we're continuing our Butter or Parkay previews where we look at each division and we try to determine whether each team in that division got better, which in our parlance we call butter, or if their imitations are in imitation, we call that Parkay. Also, we can just say if they got worse. So we'll do the Pacific Division today. That's coming up right after we do our breakfasts. Dave, have you had a breakfast this Monday morning?
Just a boring protein shake.
Very boring. My breakfast.
We were talking a little bit before, before we started recording. I'm trying to eat less meat.
Yeah.
And man, that's going rough.
Yeah,
these protein shakes are just keeping me going. Because
what's the substitute? You're just trying shakes, powders?
No. I'm just trying to eat. I'm trying to eat a lot of beans.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, man. Middle age, it makes you like reconsider a lot of things. So
yeah,
just trying to eat less meat. And man, I am just struggling with food.
Yeah, everybody in the YouTube comments, drop your meat-free food suggestions for Dave.
I need some breakfast suggestions, honestly.
That's our YouTube channel, Fast Break Breakfast. Please subscribe over there. Watch us see our facial expressions. Dave has very animated facial expressions. Also, we're both wearing dull gray t-shirts. So look forward to that. You have a Richie Tenenbaum. It's kind of a fun.
Yeah,
all right.
More of a blue.
Oh, I can't. It's not coming across to me. Maybe I'm colorblind in my old age. I need to eat more insert vitamin.
I need more light is really what it is. My lighting is poor.
My breakfast, I had a bowl of Cheerios. My daughter is here with me. She is home from school. She's not visiting home from college. She's 7, just turned 7. She's been running a fever last 36 hours. Who knows what that is? She is the best sick child ever. So far in her life, every time she gets sick, she just gets cuddly and wants to watch TV. She doesn't feel bad. She's just like, my throat hurts a little.
She wants to be made to feel better.
Yeah, she's just like, she just lays down and she'll color and she'll play. Like we played the board game Life today.
Wow.
And that, I mean, maybe not the best life lessons. Although I did appreciate some of the things because like in the game of Life, you draw a career. And some of them are like, oh, I got pilot. And she's like, pilot, this doesn't pay anything. I'm like, yeah, pilots make nothing. Makes no sense. And it's like, oh, I could be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. And the numbers have not adjusted. It's still like 80 grand a year, lawyer, 80 grand a year. But then it's like musician, 40 grand a year. I'm like, yeah, that checks out. You shouldn't be a musician. Also, that's like that's on the high end.
That is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like you're doing all right.
Yeah. What are you teaching?
So, but then there's other things where she's like, when you get to the end in real life, this is what she asked. And you get to the end in real life, can you trade in the people for $50,000? Because that's the rule of the game of life in your car. I'm like, no, that has no application whatsoever. There's no, I'm trying to pick up pets and kids and trade them in for money later. It's like, no, that doesn't really.
That is,
doesn't really work that way.
Trafficking.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you could say if you do procreate, possibly at the end of your life, they could help you out of a jam. Sure. If you're a guy working for $100 holding first down markers at NFL games and you get injured and have no health care, like maybe your kids could step in if the government doesn't. I don't know. No, not a lot of great lessons from the game of life other than
I don't think
don't be a pilot or a musician.
I don't think I've ever played that game.
I used to play.
If I did, it was 40 years ago.
Anyways, the kids home. We didn't have very exciting breakfast. We had bowls of Cheerios. I had a bowl of plain Cheerios. I cut up strawberries into hers, so it looked like the picture on the box. She ate it. She liked it. She's very agreeable. She's watching a movie right now as I record. I've told her no matter what, don't interrupt me. No, I didn't. All right. Anyways, Dave, those were our breakfasts. After our breakfast, before we get to our Butter or Parkay previews, we get to our breakfast in bed apologies. This is my chance to make right what I got wrong on a previous episode. It is usually the first time we talk about the NBA, and it will be right now. Last episode, when we did the Central Division preview, during the episode, I even forgot one of the prompts I wanted to use for the Central Division. I wanted to talk about a fake Brandon Ingram trade for each team in the Central Division, and I didn't even get through it. Like I remembered it. I brought it up. We talked about a few teams. We didn't actually do a fictitious Brandon Ingram trade suggestion for the Bucks or the Pacers. Now, I actually think the idea of the Pelicans and Bucks doing a trade around Brandon Ingram is very, very interesting. I actually like this trade a lot.
Middleton though?
I think you trade Chris Middleton for Brandon Ingram. Here's my reasoning. If you're a newer Fast Break Breakfast listener, I needed to let you know Chris Middleton's one of my favorite NBA players. I feel like I have a few big time hits in my podcasting career. One of them is calling Chris Middleton as being amazing before he broke out. Another one is identifying a guy named Nikola Jokic early in his career. But I love Chris Middleton, and maybe it's too painful for the Bucks to break up Giannis and Chris Middleton. My thinking is Chris Middleton is pretty old, coming off double ankle surgery. There's no guarantee.
Knee surgery before that.
Yeah, there's no guarantee he's going to put together an entire season. Also, I think the Bucks' ceiling isn't honestly that high. You got Giannis, you got Dame, you got Brook Lopez. Then it's like Bobby Portis, aging Pat Connaughton. I feel like their ceiling isn't that high. I think it's almost a no-risk move to swap out Chris Middleton for a much younger Brandon Ingram. I also, when I think about Brandon Ingram and the difficulty the Pelicans are having trading him, because this guy needs the ball in his hands, hasn't looked good in situations off the ball. Even like the FIBA experience a couple years ago, like wasn't rebounding, wasn't defending,
right?
Almost unplayable. And then when you look about his contract situation, and again, when we talk about Brandon Ingram trades, it's not that he's not good. It's just who wants to pay him? Very few teams want to pay him. And then the teams that have to match the salary to bring him in, it's like, why would we do this? I think the Bucks are maybe one of the only situations where it makes sense to me just to get a younger player alongside Giannis. And I actually like the fit of Giannis and Brandon Ingram playing together theoretically. You can do Giannis at the 5 in this situation. You can also do Brook Lopez at the 5 with Giannis at the 4, Brandon Ingram at the 3. I don't hate it, as opposed to most other teams where I hate it, where I'm like, Brandon Ingram doesn't work there. So my thinking is, Chris Middleton, thanks for everything. We love you, but maybe this fit works better if we bring in Brandon Ingram. And then the Bucks could either pay him, hopefully not too much. The issue again is whatever the extension is going to be, but it also maybe gives them an out if it doesn't go great. They don't have to pay him. They can let him walk. And then after this year, they could even maybe trade Damian Lillard for whatever they can get and do one total reboot around Giannis and hopefully have one final Giannis push. But my fake trade would be Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton for Brandon Ingram and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. This saves the Bucks a lot of tax payments this year, and it just gets them younger. It gets them a younger option alongside Giannis. Do you follow my thinking, or am I just totally?
I see it for the Bucks, but what does it do for the Pelicans?
So
right?
you
actually have a similar problem if you bring in Middleton. He also does need the ball in his hands.
So, but Middleton can work, in my mind, that man can work off the ball. Where he is a catch and shoot, just beautiful catch and shoot guy. And I don't think
that the Pelicans need is not Chris Middleton.
I agree. It doesn't totally fix their front court. Yeah. I don't like a Brook Lopez, like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, but then what are the Bucks going to do about their front court? So it didn't make sense to me there. I feel like if Chris Middleton's healthy, if he's even 80% of last year's Chris Middleton, which is now creeping closer to not a great player. But I feel like you could start, if you get your idea of moving CJ to the bench, which I agree with, if CJ McCollum comes off the bench, the Pelicans, if you're healthy, if you can start DeJounte Murray, Trey Murphy, Chris Middleton, Herb Jones, and Zion, that 5-man lineup spanks people in my mind. Like Trey Murphy doesn't create his own shot. Neither does Herb Jones, but DeJounte, Chris with a little bit of shot creation, I think is really going to help. Plus just more shooting to this team. And then on the bench, all right, McCollum's off the bench. You still got Jose Alvarado. Yeah, I like it. And I also feel like it gives you some clarity. Maybe those are some bad contracts to have around. The other issue for the Pelicans, it pushes them deeper into the luxury tax, which is probably not a thing they're into. So that's the drawback. But I don't think anyone needs to trade picks or anything for the Pelicans. It removes the issue of we don't want to pay Brandon Ingram, and the fit isn't great with who we have. I feel like the fit is slightly better with Chris Middleton. There's less of an expectation that the game and the whole thing offense needs to run through me. Chris Middleton maybe gets to play the last 2 years of his contract out in a pretty good situation. I don't know. I like it, but maybe I'm on an island there.
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it. I mean,
that's fine.
I do like Ingram as a Middleton replacement.
Yep.
But yeah,
well, could the Pelicans then redirect Chris Middleton somewhere?
I think it would have to be a 3-teamer, right?
Yep.
Like, what if you, I mean, like, what if you could convince, I don't know, it's probably too much money, and I'm not looking at a salary sheet, but like a team like Orlando, could use Chris Middleton.
I mean, then they would send Wendell Carter to the Pelicans because that's
maybe
the one
Wendell
you're
Carter.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't hate it.
But something like that. Like, I think about Middleton going to one of these teams. I mean, frankly, like, what about Charlotte? Like, I think that they don't necessarily want to be as bad as they have been, right? Like, they got a new coach. Sure, they'd be happy to win the lottery. But, you know, what if he went to Charlotte and played with Middleton, those young guys?
I mean, then you'd have the Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. Like, where's Middleton fitting into that situation? I don't know. Yeah, you might be right. Maybe I'm the exception where it makes a lot of sense to me. A Pacers fake trade just can't do it. Sorry, actually, they don't have the money to match. The only situation would be if they wanted to move Miles Turner, which I don't think the Pacers would, although they do have concerns going forward now since they're paying TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard. Like, what are they going to do with the Miles Turner contract next season? That's a team that doesn't really go into the luxury tax. So I really even couldn't come up with a fake Pacers trade. You're agreeing there? Nothing you can imagine. Yeah. No. Reviewing, I mentioned a Pistons trade. I like it. Here, this is the issue here would be, what if the Pistons just traded Isaiah Stewart and Tim Hardaway Jr. for Brandon Ingram? That is an almost nothing return for the Pelicans. But they don't have to pay Brandon Ingram his next contract. And they get an average-ish center who could come off the bench or could even start for you alongside Zion if you wanted to start. The Tim Hardaway Jr. contract is expiring. This also gets the Pelicans out of the tax this season, which you'd think they might want to do.
Pretty big.
For the Pistons, should any team have Tobias Harris and Brandon Ingram? No, probably not. But like, what else are you doing?
They're at least they are NBA players though, and
they're NBA players.
That's the thing that Detroit has been missing.
I think
fielding a G League team is not good.
Yeah. If you included the one I mentioned last week, if you made it an Isaiah Stewart and Tobias Harris trade for Brandon Ingram, which you'd have to wait, of course, for a while to make that deal legal. I don't love the Pelicans rotation, but like if you got a free Tobias Harris, okay. It's the same Chris Middleton issue. It's like, is he coming off the bench now? That also would take
though.
That also would
Tobias
take
Harris, maybe.
Yeah, you'd have to include another player, so probably Jeremiah Robinson Earl for the Pelicans, and it gets them very close to the first apron. Maybe that's a non-starter. But I like the idea of the Pistons under the why not? You'll probably win 35 games if you have Brandon Ingram and Jalen Duren as your front court, alongside Cade Cunningham and your young guys.
Like maybe you sniff the play-in.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Let's sniff the play-in with JB Bickerstaff.
And especially because you have Cade Cunningham. Yeah. We don't even I really just don't have a great read on Cade Cunningham and what his career is going to be because I've yet to see what it looks like when he plays next to good players.
I don't believe anyone who says they do.
Right.
Have a good grasp on Cade Cunningham. The Bulls trade Jalen Smith and Lonzo Ball for Brandon Ingram. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, that's even selling. That almost feels like the Bulls would have to include some kind of
They'd have to throw a pick
for just the PR. You'd have to get some kind of swap on that.
But Lonzo's coming back, man. So
I mean, could Lonzo go back to New Orleans?
It would be cool. He would. Oh man.
I would say the Bulls just don't have salary issues going forward. So like overpay Brandon Ingram. Who really cares?
Right.
And what's he going to do? Is he going to take away touches from Patrick Williams? You'll be okay.
I think, And
then the Cavs, when we mentioned Jared Allen for Brandon Ingram, probably not. I mean, it makes sense for the Pelicans. I don't think the Cavs should do it, honestly. And then I was trying to think of like a Max Strus and Dean Wade for Brandon Ingram. You mentioned last week that it's a lot of mouths to feed with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and Brandon Ingram. So there you have it, though. Completionist. We came up with a fake trade for every Central Division team, except for the Pacers. Just can't do it. Anyways, that was my apology. And now let's take a quick break and let's come back and preview the Pacific Division. All right, Dave, I teased it with previewing the Pacific Division, but real quick, actually, let's hit some news items that happened in the NBA. The league adopted some new rules around the out of bounds replays. Now, you and I, we kind of complain a lot about replay review, not just in basketball, but in all sports. However, Dave, this is something we've talked about before because Monty McCutcheon let it slip on a summer league broadcast. This was the change they were going to do. This specific change just seems nothing but good. The change is now when you're already reviewing an out of bounds call, which you would be reviewing anyway, the officials now are able to call a foul if the foul causes the ball to go out of bounds. They did not have this ability in previous seasons. So if we already have the evil that is replay, at the very least, we were stuck with this. Well, that's clearly a foul. Kyrie Irving fouled Jaden McDaniels. That's why the ball's out of bounds.
That's the
doesn't
play
make
I was
any
just
sense.
thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't see the downside. Well, do you think there's anything wrong with this new addition to the replay?
Man, it's the creep. It's the creep. Because we're going to get to the point where it's like, okay, but if you rewind just a little bit further, you can see Jaden McDaniels actually initiates the contact.
Yeah, he pushed off a so-and-so to,
I just don't care enough. We're not talking about things where the fate of the universe is at stake. It's a freaking basketball game.
It's the state of that one was specifically, and we've had these calls all the time. That one specifically, it didn't swing a playoff series, but it greatly affected.
It might have swung a game,
in a playoff series. And
if you're going to review stuff, I guess you might as well review that. But man, I don't like the reviews. I don't care if it's right. Like, I think perfect is the enemy of good here, and sports is supposed to be about fun, not technicalities. This is like, people applauded Chris Paul that time for getting a technical foul on the other team for not having a tucked in jersey.
Yeah.
I hate that so much. Like I see it's funny. Yeah. But it's also not really like sports, I'd rather kick your butt than win the paper game. That's just not for me. So like the replay stuff just goes against the spirit of who I am as a person.
Here's the thing.
It's not right. Oh, okay.
How about maybe just tuck your shirt in instead of being too cool to tuck your shirt in?
I know, but shirts come on.
The issue with this new rule, like you said, it's the creep and it's the word proximate.
Right.
So they can call a foul that is proximate to what's going on. And that's always they claim, the league claims these rules are not subjective, but these words are in fact open to interpretation. And it's like, what is going to be proximate? But I think just basically being able to see the play and be like, all right, that's a foul on this guy, knocked it out. But then there probably are unknowns that are going to affect things.
Again, I just don't understand. Why don't we add another referee and have a full-time replay ref that just rewatch every play? If we're going to replay any of them, just rewatch all of them.
We've talked about
we have to get them right.
With the NFL, which I don't even understand from watching all NFL. They have a God view in New York that just changes plays now. Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, New York said that play was out of bounds. No review initiated. I'm like, oh great. This seems amazing.
It works.
Anyways,
I still hate that too. But
AJ Griffin, who is just a couple of years away from being called the best shooter in the draft. The Hawks unloaded him to the Rockets for a second-round pick, and it now sounds like AJ Griffin might be leaving the NBA. Dave, you remember how teams used to get fined, or it happens like if you trade a guy and he's secretly hurt.
Yeah.
Like the Sixers got dinged for this, or the Pelicans. I can't remember which way it went, Was it the Drew Holiday trade?
It
Something
might
like
have been
that.
the Drew Holiday
The
trade.
Isaiah Thomas trade also with like the Celtics and the
Yeah.
Cavs. Like you traded us damaged goods. If you know your guy you're trading actually doesn't want to play basketball, do you have to disclose it?
What my assumption is that this is a conversation that happened ahead of time,
Yeah, they
and
probably disclosed it. We don't know. They didn't
yeah,
disclose it. The Hawks were like,
right.
"Hey, we're not sure he wants to play babasketball," and they're like, "All right, we'll take him
We'll
for."
take it, take the
we'll see.
salary, and then take it off the books.
Um,
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, good for him as long as this is like coming from a good place where he's
yeah.
just like, hey, this isn't for me. He made a pretty good amount of money in a short amount of time, and now can probably do anything he wants. That's
So
the dream.
if he leaves the NBA, if he decides to walk away, by my count, he will have been the third guy this offseason with guaranteed NBA money to say no thank you to playing in the NBA. We got AJ Griffin potentially, and then Sasha Vezenkov, and then Yuta
Yep.
Watanabe. That's three guys who had guaranteed money who were like, I would rather not have the guaranteed money. I want to go play, live
Do
somewhere
anything
else,
else. Yeah,
or
yeah,
just not be in the NBA, which might be
yeah.
AJ. I don't know. It's interesting. Um, Finally,
I mean, listen,
yeah,
I get the guys that want to go play overseas.
yeah,
Quality of life just matters, man, and
yeah,
the travel is not as great. The lifestyle, in my opinion, is better.
yeah.
The money's not as good, but
Speaking of the Central Division, changing gears, Isaac Okoro signed a contract. This seems like a really team friendly deal. 3 years,
surprising too.
$38 million. I don't know if surprising is the word
In
I would use.
September,
I mean, like you assumed Okoro was trapped with the restricted free agent thing.
right?
No offer sheets coming. He ends up getting $38 million. It is, I still think team friendly because it's not that much. It's a
Yeah,
very movable deal for the Cavaliers, even if Okoro has flatlined as a player, if he doesn't get any better. I mean, worst case scenario, this is just someone you can trade for another guy who's signed an MLE somewhere. So like, it's good for Isaac. He locked on a ton of money. I mean, 38
right.
million, it's a ton of money. So that I don't know. I see both sides, but I feel like it comes down on the side of like the Cavs got a pretty they got a pretty okay possible starter and or
Yeah,
rotation guy for cheap. Let's get rid of restricted free agency. Seems
I
like
think we should get rid of restricted free agency. It seems that's kind of unfair, but he actually I think has a market. Like he's a fifth starter, and those guys don't grow on trees. And 3 year, I mean, it's less than 13 million a year
yep.
for a guy who can like credibly defend. That's pretty good.
Here's the issue. I mean, obviously the hole in his game is shooting, and we keep seeing it over and over and over that all these guys I love who can't shoot,
Yeah,
teams are just like, nope, we're not doing any non-shooters anymore.
right.
So even if he can defend, like there's not really a market for him.
Yeah.
Like a Chuma Okeke, like that guy, he can defend, can't hit a
Mhm.
shot. Like,
Okoro has his moments, right? Like
yeah.
Okoro will sometimes have these games where he'll go like 3 or 4, but then he'll have a couple of games where he's over 3.
Well, I have pickup games, Dave, where I hit 3 or 4. I mean, anybody can do it. Um, all right, let's get to the Pacific Division. So our Butter or Parkay previews basically operate under the assumption that every team normally thinks they got better. The fan base convinces themselves another year of chemistry. We hired a new coach. We hired new assistant coaches. We have these young guys. We drafted these guys. We traded for this guy. This guy needed to change the scenery. Whatever it is, we're all optimistic about our fan bases. So we're supposed to say, no, your optimism is wrong. So we just say Butter if you got better, Parkay if we think you got worse. Let's go from top of the standings from last year to the bottom of the standings. So Dave, tell us about the Los Angeles Clippers who won this division with 51 wins. What did the Clippers do in the offseason?
Clippers had a kind of, I would say, a rough summer, right? Like they lost the
Mm-hmm.
best player that changed teams in the market. Paul George left. They lost Mason Plumlee. They lost Russell Westbrook, Daniel Tice, BJ
Yeah.
Boston, Musa Diabate. I mean, these are all guys that actually played for them last year. Remember, the Clippers, like they played 12 or 13 guys. They have to because they're, always hurt. Kawhi's still there though. And I think that if you're looking ahead at this season, you're betting and you think they're going to have a good year, you're betting on Kawhi being healthy and being out there because the guys they brought in, It's Derek Jones Jr., which great, but that's not Paul George. Chris Dunn, great. That's not Paul George. They brought Nico Batum back. Huge for them. They needed him. Mo Bamba is probably going to get some run behind Zubats, who they extended. Outside of that, man, they did not really bring in any help. They did re-sign James Harden, so that's good. You're going to get new contract James Harden for a year. I mean, when you look, Vegas has them winning 10 fewer games. Their over under, I think, is around 40 and a half or so.
That checks.
And I don't know, man. I think that this team might be okay in the regular season because of what James Harden can bring.
So I think the team's going to be okay. But when we do this exercise, this one's an easy one. This team's worse. Vegas is correct.
Worse.
Way, way worse. Also, they brought in, I don't think you said him, Kevin Porter Jr. is on guaranteed money with a player option. How?
I have no idea.
So,
and he was in Greece last year.
So this team got worse. Like you said, losing Paul George, the best player to change teams. It's rough. So here's the thing. I think obviously I think everyone agrees losing Paul George makes you worse, but this is a very illustrative stat. The Clippers last year, when Paul George was off the court, this is over 2,600 possessions. Cleaning the Glass has him with a negative 4.7 net rating. This is a team that won 51 games. And when Paul George was off the court, they had basically a negative 5 net rating. What's even worse, if I thought maybe there's going to be a trick to this, I started playing with Cleaning the Glass and I'm like, all right, well, what if I also include the minutes or the possessions where Russell Westbrook was also off the court? I thought maybe it would also be like better, but no. In the 1,200 possessions without Paul George or Russell Westbrook on the court, they were -8 net rating. So Kawhi Leonard only, air quotes, lineups, not that good last season. So this team's worse. Also for each team, I forgot to set this up. Also each team, let's say who we think the starters are going to be. Let's say who we think the closing lineup's going to be, and also our subjective most fun lineup. So they're going to start James Harden. They're going to start Kawhi. They're going to start the recently extended Zubac. Who are the other 2 starters in your mind?
I mean, it's going to have to be Derek Jones and Nico Batum.
Okay.
Right?
I don't think that's who they're going to start, but
I mean, maybe Terrence Mann.
I feel like
is the starter.
I feel like let's accept maybe Derek Jones. And Terrence Mann is like the 2 sort of. I kind of feel like they should maybe consider starting Norm Powell just to have any amount of shooting. The shooting on this team is just a huge question mark. There's just not. I mean,
there's none.
I mean, Chris Dunn, I think, can do some kind of a proximate replication. I use that word proximate like in the replay reviews. He can do sort of a replication of Russell Westbrook-ish type things, maybe with fewer mistakes. But they can't shoot. No one on this team shoots. Maybe Bones Highland takes a bigger role this year.
But think about who's running off a screen for this team. They don't have a single guy you could run floppy for. That's odd. That's pretty odd.
I mean, I think maybe Terrence Mann and Derek Jones start and they leave Norm Powell in that bench role.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, man.
Well, Norm Powell could be the 2 guard though.
I feel like that makes the most sense to me.
That'd be the best offense for sure. Maybe it's Harden, Powell, Derek Jones, Kawhi, Zubats.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder if they even promised Derek Jones the spot when they signed him and got him to change teams. Yeah, I don't know. I think my closing lineup would be Harden with Powell and then Kawhi, maybe Batum over Derek Jones. I think Batum would be in my closing 5. Zubac, sure. Batum, Leonard, Powell, Harden. Yeah, that I think is my top. That's the best I can do. Sorry, Derek Jones Jr. I'm going to have to see this fit. I mean, this team, let us not forget, yes, Paul George was there. This team was the best team in the NBA for a solid 2 months last year.
Oh yeah.
As good or better than the Celtics. They were 26-4 over a 30-game stretch.
At that point, we were all we felt pretty confident it was all health for them, and
Yeah.
it turned out,
I mean,
that was the issue.
I picked them to beat the Mavs in the first round. The odds were, I think, close. It was not like
Yeah.
the Mavs were big favorites. The Clippers won game one, then Kawhi gets hurt, and that's basically that.
Over.
But yeah, this team's worse. They have a confusing lineup team. I think they're going to be solid though, despite the fact that some of these cleaning the glass lineup stats using these players from last year weren't very good. I mean, the 6-man or 7-man rotation of James Harden, Norm Powell, Kawhi, Derek Jones Jr., Zubac, and then Terrence Mann and Nick Batum. Those are 7 good players. And like, you think Ty Lue's going to get that together? Do we give them any boost, Dave, from having their own gym? They're going to get better home games, a better schedule by being able to play in their own arena.
What if it's empty?
It's not going to be empty. There's the fan wall. They're going to fill it with the fan wall.
Okay. If this team is a middle of the road team and Kawhi is not out there.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, also PJ Tucker's still there. Theoretically, they could trade PJ Tucker for something. Maybe they could get involved with that 3-way deal with the Pelicans and the Bucks, bring in Pat Connaughton.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what they're going to do.
How about Chris Middleton?
Man, make the money work. Let's do it. This team is worse. Parkay, easy Parkay, but
sure.
we still talked about him for a long time. The Suns,
well, they're fascinating.
They are fascinating. This entire division is fascinating. This entire division, like everyone had a winning record. They all won last season between 46 and 51 games. It's going to be a very competitive division once again. And last year, second place in the division went to the Suns. They won 49 games, and then got smoked by the Timberwolves in the postseason. This offseason, they lost Eric Gordon, Drew Eubanks, David Roddy. They stretched and waived Nasir Little. They brought in Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, and they poached Mason Plumlee from the Clippers. Also drafted some defensive guys, and they hired Mike Budenholzer. This one is tough. I've been on board with the Suns ever since they found a way to get Tyus Jones. Whether or not Tyus Jones and Monte Morris and Mason Plumlee make them better than Eric Gordon and Drew Eubanks, that's kind of narrow. I lean towards the positive. I feel like maybe slightly better just because the fit's a little bit better. How do you feel about them?
I think they're better. Tyus Jones is a big deal. I just think he really does kind of set up their starting lineup to make more sense.
Yeah.
And then I actually, it's funny to say this, but I don't hate the Plumlee signing.
No.
Getting him there to back up Nurk helps you quite a bit when you need to go a little bit more offense. His stuff with dribble handoffs, you can see him and Booker and Beal, especially. It's kind of lost with Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal used to run more dribble handoffs at the elbow when he was in Washington than anyone in the league. It was his bread and butter. And now he's got a guy there that he can safely and comfortably do that with in second unit. So I could see that bench unit with like Bradley Beal is like, Booker and KD go to the bench. Maybe Nurk goes to the bench. You bring in Plumlee and let Beal go out there and do his thing a little bit, working off Plumlee. I actually think that's a pretty good signing too. Yeah, they're better, and they're gonna be better because everyone's gonna be there the whole time. I mean, I think when you look at what Devin Booker did at Team USA, we've all kind of said this in one way or the other, right? But the work he did this summer, if he could come back and do kind of something similar, that's insane for Phoenix. So it would be a big boost for them.
Big concerns for the Suns. It's going to be how much do Durant and Nurkic drop off. Nurkic had a relatively healthy season last year. Durant, of course, just very, very old. And like you said, I think the chemistry from another year, I normally scoff at the idea of like another year together. That's why we're going to be better. But I actually kind of believe it. Just having another year of, Bradley Beal and Durant and Booker and Grayson Allen all playing together should help. I do think the addition of Mike Budenholzer can give them a big boost. I like their top seven a ton. We now can maybe get into the starting lineup. I think they are going to start Tyus. He actually said he was going to start in like his
I think he's starting.
announcement. So
I
Tyus
don't think
starts.
he signs that deal without the.
They apparently they told him he was going to start. So I think that means Grayson Allen moves to the bench. But Tyus, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic starting, and then having Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal as like your top 7. I love that. I think it's really, really good. Closing lineup, would you change that at all? Are you going to find a way to get the shooting of Grayson Allen in there?
I think it's game by game for sure. But I don't know, man. I think Tyus Jones is probably in that closing lineup.
Yeah, I think maybe my most fun lineup won't have Tyus Jones in there. I think my most fun lineup, well, it's either maybe Durant at the 5. I think I'm gonna find a way to put Royce O'Neal in the game. I would say maybe Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, Royce O'Neal, and Kevin Durant is my subjective favorite 5-man lineup they can put out there. What's a 5-man lineup you really like that they can play?
I mean, anything with KD at the 5, with Booker and Beal and I mean, I'd maybe throw Royce O'Neal out there too. Any combination of that, like number one, you got so much length. You can switch defensively. You just don't have the rim protection. Because KD at 36 is not KD at 30.
I also think this team has a little bit of depth. I mean, Monte Morris was probably the most devastated person to find out that Tyus Jones was coming. So I think Monte Morris wanted to rebuild his value. But now they have the 2 guys who don't turn the basketball over a lot or at all in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris. Like Josh Okogie, who I like, has been pushed further down the depth chart, which is probably good. The guys they drafted, like Ryan Dunn, I mean, apparently no offensive skills whatsoever. So I'll probably eventually want to weasel him into my favorite 5-man lineup and watching him play. But I think it seems just a little bit pat of butter. They've improved. I also still am pretty sore how my Grizzlies gave them 3 second-round picks for this like 2030 3-way first-round pick swap ticket. And meanwhile, the Suns took those 3 second-round picks and traded to get Royce O'Neal. I would rather have Royce O'Neal, the player, than the dreams of a 3-way swap in 2030. Anyways,
can we talk? Wait, let's talk Budenholzer 1 second, because I actually think low key this could be an area in which they've gotten butter, right?
Yeah.
Bud Ball is not necessarily going to work for them.
Okay,
just with the 3 dynamic players that they have. Like, I don't think that he's going to be like, hey, KD, see this blue box on the court? Go stand there.
Yeah.
And at this point in his career, like KD he's not necessarily coachable, right? He doesn't necessarily need to be coached, right? He's an amazing player. So I don't know what kind of difference we're going to see on the offensive side, but I do think Bud's defense is going to, like center field with Nurk is going to work. They are going to get a big boost on the defensive end just by using Bud's principles. And this isn't to say that Frank Vogel is not a good defensive coach, because he is. But I do think that Bud's system works better for the personnel they have. KD, like if KD helps off, if he can help out on the back line at the rim, that's a game changer for them. I just don't know if he can do it night in and night out at his age.
Gotcha. Let's move to the Lakers, Dave. The Los Angeles Lakers, much to the chagrin of their fans, haven't done much. What's their offseason been like?
Well, they brought in JJ Redick.
Hey, they hired JJ Redick.
But not to play basketball. He's going to coach the team. We don't know how that's going to go. They drafted Dalton Connect, who is, I don't know, our age. But he's a movement shooter. He's going to come off screens. I mean, honestly, like that's a player that if you draft him for fit, that's a guy that fits, because that's what they need, right? They need more shooting around LeBron and AD. So they got him. They also brought in this other guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
LeBron James Jr. Yeah.
Which honestly, like I've gotten over the initial, like, this is kind of gross stuff. And now I'm down to see it. I want to see it. I'm rooting for him. And then they just signed Christian Coloco. It's a pretty good pickup. Other than that, they didn't really, Jordan Goodwin, a guy who might play a little bit here and there.
Jordan Goodwin, who led the Grizzlies in rebounds per game last season.
Yeah.
Point guard averaging 8 rebounds a game.
They lost Spencer Dinwiddie. They lost Taurean Prince. Those are the only guys that were in their rotation that they lost. They're bringing everybody back. They were okay last year, but LeBron is going to be 40 in December. And Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis, right? Like, he was great last year. can he be as resilient this year and as good? I think those are the question marks going in. I happen to think he can.
So I think they're going to be. I think they should be competitive and fine, but that's not our exercise. Our
Right.
exercise is to look at the ledger of things they did. When you mentioned their offseason, you started with a rookie coach and 2 draft picks.
Yeah.
So just the simple ledger of Tarian Prince and Spencer Dinwiddie are gone, and then JJ Redick is here, and Dalton Connect and Bronny James. For me, that's just a Parkay talent wise. I mean, maybe you include Gabe Vincent is going to play basketball this year after only playing, I think, 10 games last year. I don't know if that helps you that much. If you want to frame it that way, I can work myself into all right, they're going to be slightly better. Maybe they're going to play Max Christie this year. They gave Max Christie JJ Redick money. So maybe Max Christie gets in the rotation, but like, I think the team's going to be fine. If Dalton Connect can play,
right.
If Dalton Connect is a player and JJ Redick is an okay coach, then that's, I think, their formula combined with health that you're good, competitive, you win 47 games again. I mean, like,
look, they've got a great coaching staff. I'm actually not worried about JJ as a coach. Basketball coaching, especially, in the NBA, it's about organization. He seems to be a very organized person. He was that way as a player. He knows the game. That's not a question. It's just, what's it going to be like when he has to do those in-game decisions? What happens when he and LeBron butt heads? Because that's going to happen, right? Like, how does he respond to that? How does the team respond to that?
How do you even grant someone like JJ Redick, who is younger than LeBron, who has played with LeBron, who has podcasted with LeBron, how can anyone imbue him with the authority over LeBron?
Well, this is the thing, though.
LeBron is in charge.
Yes, and he always has been.
Okay.
This is like Darvin Ham was not the coach.
Yeah.
Okay. LeBron has never really, like, I would argue, hadn't had a coach since Ty Lue. Because he's not like the most coachable guy. Again, these are great players. They don't need coaches the same way. Everyone else does, though. And that's where we're going to have the questions answered. But if Dalton Connect can come out, if he's able to be a 38% 3-point shooter as a rookie, it's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Who's your closing 5 for this team? I assume they're going to start the same ish players they did last year. I mean, maybe if Jared Vanderbilt's healthy,
that's a big question mark.
But I assume it's going to be Rui, LeBron, and AD in the front court, and then Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. But who would your closing 5 be?
I mean, I don't know, it's tough. I mean, obviously LeBron and AD are going to be out there. I think you got to have Austin Reeves,
I agree,
and D'Angelo Russell in the closing lineup, and then it's, do we need a shooter or do we need a guard? Someone to guard. So it'd be Vanderbilt a lot on playing the 3. It could be maybe Dalton Connect. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he has a chance to be out there if he's making shots. Maybe it's Max Christie. Maybe it's his time.
You would think that they're going to actually give him a chance to play. It was funny last year at the media day. They even shut him down when they were like, someone asked him, like, do you feel like you could have played more? I can't remember the exact quote. He's like, yeah, I was ready to play. They just never played me. And they're like, that's all the time we have now. Thanks, Max. I think my favorite lineup, just because I'm not the biggest fan aesthetically of D'Angelo Russell, I think I agree with you that, like, the closing 5 is basically the starters probably, but like, my favorite 5, I'm going to put in Dalton Connect for D'Angelo Russell. Have Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect, try to handle the ball. I don't know how that'll go, but LeBron's my point guard. Who cares? And then Rui and AD out there. Also, this team still has Christian Wood, but maybe he's hurt again or something.
He's going to at least miss the first 2 months of the season. So
yeah, not great.
But that's more of a butter situation for them anyway, because he doesn't help them.
I mean, hopefully this is a team that hopefully they're fully healthy. We say that for every team, but like, this is a team after they dismantled my Grizzlies in 2023, and then they added Gabe Vincent. Most people were pretty high on the Lakers coming into last year, and it just never was the best. And those guys weren't healthy. And like 47 games, it's not, because it's the Lakers, we say, well, this is maybe not good enough. I mean, they won the in-season tournament. They escaped out of the play-in to make it to the playoffs. They got beat by the Nuggets, which wasn't that surprising. So like, they're still right there, but of course LeBron's old, rookie head coach. So yeah, slight Parkay. Let's go to the Kings. The Kings went 46-36 last year. They smashed the Warriors in the play-in, but then lost to the Pelicans and missed the playoffs. Their offseason was huge. They traded for DeMar DeRozan, possibly even bigger. They just retained Malik Monk, who a lot of people thought was leaving. Maybe DeMar DeRozan is the more important player, but I think the fact that I think a lot of us thought like the Magic or the Pistons were going to swoop in and steal him, them keeping Malik Monk was very, very big. They also salary dumped Sasha Vezenkov, that cost them Davion Mitchell. Maybe that doesn't really matter. They added, they also lost Harrison Barnes and Chris Duarte in that DeMar DeRozan trade. So in the door come DeMar DeRozan. Also, they drafted Devin Carter, but he's out, I believe, until January with a shoulder issue.
But Devin Carter is sort of their Davion Mitchell replacement.
Yeah, hopefully he's at least that good in his rookie season. What do you think? Just a simple in and out, adding DeMar and then losing Harrison Barnes, Chris Duarte. What do you think?
Butter.
Okay. Butter. Yeah.
DeMar's a better player. And then there's some fit concerns. You worry about the defense and stuff, but this team is going to score like crazy.
Yeah.
Having Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, and DeMar DeRozan that's a lot of on the ball scoring ability.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder what that's going to look like, running an offense. Like, how much does Domantas Sabonis have to touch the basketball? And is that sustainable when you have that many mouths to feed?
So
definitely butter.
I think there's a question mark about who the fifth starter is. We're starting De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis and DeRozan and Keegan Murray. And then it comes down to either Keon Ellis, who finished the season pretty strong, who made 41% of his 3-pointers last year, or you go pedal to the floor offense with Malik Monk, or even Kevin Huerter, who in my brain I think of as a more safe floor spacer. Maybe I don't trust Keon Ellis as much, but like maybe the fit better defensively. Who do you think is going to be
Keon
or
Ellis.
Should be? Just stick with Keon Ellis?
I would go with Keon Ellis, man. The shooting is there. The defense is there. I mean, great size for, to have on the perimeter. I would go him. And plus I like Monk and Huerter off the bench.
Yeah. So if your bench, you still need some kind of ball handling. They brought in Jordan McLaughlin. I didn't mention him. He's, I think, going to be the emergency fill-in. He's a totally fine backup point to fill in while while Devin Carter is out. So if you have Huerter and Monk and McLaughlin with Trey Lyles off your bench, it's a really nice rotation. One thing I like about this team, I like DeMar DeRozan. He's one of my favorite guys to watch play basketball. And maybe it's just that he's just so unique compared to everyone else in the NBA. He's a mid-range assassin. But one thing that I like about this team that I think is going to help them in close games, I think they have multiple now half-court shot creators. And beyond that, you have clutch players. And I hate to cite the Clutch Player of the Year award because it's an idiotic award that is given out for statistical variance. But last year, Steph won the Clutch Player of the Year award. He should not have. DeMar DeRozan should have. And the year before, De'Aaron Fox, I believe, justly was awarded the Clutch Player of the Year. So these are two of the most clutch guys who can get their own shots off. And those two guys being on the court together who can create for themselves, and then also having Sabonis, I think that can flip a lot of games. So many NBA games come down to just the final couple minutes, and having those guys together, it's going to be huge for him. Yeah, I agree with you. This team is butter. I think we basically agree on the starting lineup. Is there a different 5-man lineup you want to see, or is it just that one? That's a pretty sick starting lineup. Yeah.
Yeah. I worry about the defense for them, obviously. And I like Alex Len, but he's not a good enough option to start or close games. So yeah, I think that's kind of their best bet.
Maybe they'll
anything with Fox, Monk, and DeRozan is going to be fun.
Actually, I should have said this. No. Because I did not include Monk in their starting lineup. Their most fun lineup has to have Malik Monk in it. I'm sorry. I'm kicking. I'm doing Fox. I'm doing Monk. I'm doing DeRozan. And I'm probably doing Sabonis. Or Keon is my fifth. I don't know. Am I kicking out Keegan Murray? What if I kick out Sabonis? Make Keegan Murray my five?
I think Keegan's too important.
Yeah. This team should be super fun to watch. And there is some of the novelty of they're one of the teams that got a big name guy to change teams. So there's the novel interest of watching DeMar DeRozan in the new situation. But yeah, I'm very excited in this team. I think they're butter. Let's move to the Warriors, and we'll do that right after this quick break. All right, Dave, the Warriors last season got roasted by the Kings in the play-in. They still won 46 games. They missed Draymond Green for a lot of the season due to suspension. They discovered they had some players in Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga this offseason. Yeah, the untouchable Podziemski. This offseason, though, it's highlighted by Klay Thompson leaving. Also, Chris Paul left. So 2 Hall of Famers out the door.
Now that did not go the way I thought you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say highlighted by bringing in
2 of my favorite NBA players.
D'Anthony Melton.
Yeah, so they got rid of Klay Thompson and Chris Paul. Also, Dario Saric is gone. They bring in my 2 favorite NBA players, possibly, in D'Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson. They also added Buddy Hield. Their objective is to recreate Klay Thompson in the aggregate.
Yeah.
And so the question is, do you think they did it?
I think they got butter. Klay didn't have the greatest year last year, but he was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Buddy Hield, I think, is as good as Klay is right now. Shooting wise, I think that he is going to have an amazing season there. Defensively, I don't know. I mean, he's definitely not as good as Klay Thompson. But when you've got Kyle Anderson and D'Anthony Melton, like, you're going to be able to figure out your defense. I think Buddy solves so many problems for them offensively that, where now they have a guy that has to be tracked off the ball. Like, we know how powerful that is combined with Steph Curry. So, yeah, I like this team better. I mean, I think the biggest thing for them is, and unfortunately, like, Andrew Wiggins' father just passed away like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge, just lingering thing over this team for the last couple of years. He's been sick, and Andrew Wiggins missed all this time because of that. They need Andrew Wiggins to be Andrew Wiggins. That's the big difference for this team. I mean, Buddy Hield, I think, is a good enough replacement for Klay. I love D'Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson for them. Kyle Anderson's not going to be able to play in playoff games. They need Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna ignore that slight to Kyle Anderson and get to what I needed to say. I'm with you. The one difference between Klay Thompson and then like the Melton and Hield, and even I'm going to include more minutes for Podziemski situation, is like Klay had gotten to the point where like he had so much equity as this Hall of Famer and this all-time great player, where it's like you just had to ride with him, and it was like he's going to play 25, 30 minutes or more because this is our guy. And
sometimes it's bad.
And sometimes that's bad. And now it's the whole thing like, listen, we're going to use Buddy Hield situationally. We're going to use D'Anthony Melton situationally. We're going to use Kyle Anderson situationally. And there's going to be nights you don't play as much. And they have the freedom now to do that. And I, of course, very predictably, I agree with you. They're butter. I think this team is butter. This team last year was really, really good at offense. And part of that was offensive rebounding. They're going to be better at offensive rebounding now. They're also going to be, I think, really good at defense. Yeah. This team, like last year, they were basically average at defense. I would be surprised if they're not top 10 in defense this year. Klay Thompson's defense is horrific. I know he has the strength to guard some bigger guys. I know,
and that's actually what he needed to be doing, right?
But like
Klay Thompson is really more like Keegan Murray at this point. Like, he's more of a 4, I think, than anything else.
Yeah. So I think as long as there aren't big drop-offs for Steph and Draymond, and maybe there are, those guys are.
Well, I don't know. We just saw Steph, man.
We just saw Steph.
I don't know.
But I don't know. Just surrounding Steph with complementary pieces that all defend, all rebound, all force turnovers. Even if Andrew Wiggins isn't his best Andrew Wiggins, the guy's a great rebounder. He's a great defender. I think this team needs his offense to come back around, maybe more importantly. like Kuminga, whatever. They sort of unlocked Kuminga last year. Like maybe Kuminga doesn't take a further step forward. Maybe he's a negative on the defensive end, but the guy averaged 20 points per game over half of the season last year. And now you're adding all these guys in who force turnovers and rebound. This team was horrible at forcing turnovers last year. They're going to, like Kyle Anderson and Anthony Melton, that's all they do. They still have Gary Payton II. Like they still have Pajemski, who's a good rebounder.
Listen, I just went through their roster, and when was the last time the Warriors had 11 guys that could play? And it could be 12 depending on Kevon Looney.
I was about to ask. I was about to ask.
I didn't
because
count
I
Looney
had
as
12
a guy
down.
Who can play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually like one of the best Warriors on paper rosters that they've had in years, just because they have guys who can play.
I'm gonna now drop some stats about Klay Thompson, and I would like.
Why are you hating on Klay? He's not even on the team anymore.
I'm hating on Klay because he picked a fight with my favorite team, the Grizzlies. He picked a fight. He was not a gentleman about it. Last year, there were 104 players in the NBA.
Oh no. Who
played 2,000 or more minutes. Among those 104 players, Klay was 98th in deflections. Not a big deal, but just maybe demonstrative that he's not the best defender anymore. Sure. Here's the players last season to play at least 2,000 minutes with fewer deflections than Klay Thompson. Cam Thomas, Tim Hardaway Jr., Grant Williams, Keontae George, Corey Kispert, and Kyle Kuzma. Not a great list. Klay also took 0 charges last year, which, let's be honest, that goes in the positive ledger for me.
That's good.
That's good. However, the only 2 players last year to play more than 2,000 minutes and get let's arbitrary cutoff 81 deflections or fewer and not draw any charges, we have Cam Thomas and Klay Thompson. So kind of hurting you out there. And that's Klay's job, is to score 18 points per game and to make 40% of his threes. He did that.
And I think he'll do that in Dallas.
I think he'll do it in Dallas too. But I think the extra possessions you're going to be generated with the turnovers they're going to be forced by Kyle Anderson, by D'Anthony Melton, the threes that are going to be made by Buddy Hield, the more playing time maybe go to Moses Moody. I think they have successfully recreated it in the aggregate. Also, going back to the cleaning the glass stats. All right, last year, Warriors, not a great season. Guess what? They played 1,500 possessions last year where all of Klay Thompson, Chris Paul, and Dario Saric were not on the court. Plus 10.2 points per 100 possessions. Now, I am manipulating stats. I'll give you that.
Sure.
But I was curious. I'm like, these 3 guys are gone. What were their lineups with those 3 guys? Oh, plus 10 points per 100 possessions. I think Steph is good enough. Draymond's good enough that this team actually, I think, got a little bit better. The difficult part now, we would be lying if we said this roster was not odd. The roster is odd. It does not fit clearly together. There are some questions that really
stand out. And Jonathan Kuminga to me is like one of the biggest things that stands out because he hasn't kind of, taken the reins in the way that he needed to.
Yeah.
Like, remember, we've kind of toyed around with the idea. Could he replace Andrew Wiggins? Could he replace Draymond Green? No, he can't do either one.
So when we look at this odd lineup, I don't think Warriors fans know who's supposed to start. I think the best odds, if you had to place them, are on them starting the returning players. So Steph and Pajemski plus Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. I think that's probably it. I don't think Trayce Jackson-Davis starts. Maybe it's Trayce Jackson-Davis. And then I don't think they're going to do Kuminga as a 6-man again. I think Draymond, Kuminga, Wiggins, Pods, and Steph is most likely. What's your opinion?
I mean, I think that asking Draymond to play the center all the time is not great. Trayce Jackson-Davis was pretty good. I would rather just see him go ahead and start.
So then you would
think long term.
So then you do Kuminga off the bench. You do Draymond at the 4, Wiggins at the 3, Pods and Steph. I think that's, again, that seems very possible.
Or even Wiggins and Kuminga and Draymond. I mean,
Wiggins back to the 2. Let's do it.
Pods is a good player.
Yeah.
But I'm not like this person that thinks like Pods is definitely a starter.
Yep. That's where I'm at. I mean, I think the difficulty with this rotation is the way I'm doing it. I'm guessing Looney is just not going to play that much anymore.
No.
And so you have Trace Jackson Davis, who plays the 5, and then you have a bunch of guys who are probably best suited as 4s in Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, maybe Wiggins, although Wiggins can play the 3, Kyle Anderson definitely a 4. And then, finding time for all of those guys. Yeah. If they start someone different, I do think my guy Melton could start at the 2. I think Steph and Melton together would be amazing. I think my closing lineup would actually probably be Curry, Melton, Wiggins, Kuminga, and then I would close with Draymond at the 5. What would be your closing lineup? Would you?
I think I like that. Again, it's Steph, Draymond, Wiggins for sure in that closing lineup, and then I think it's going to vary from game to game. I mean, there will be games where Buddy Hield is out there closing games.
I mean, it's possible, and they have the optionality, and I don't know how much they feel like they're going to play pods. I don't think he's going to get like 28, 30 minutes a game, kind of like he did sometimes last year. I assume they're deep enough. They won't do that. My favorite 5-man lineup. I mean, this is just obviously it has my 2 favorite players. So I'm going Steph with Melton and Kyle Anderson, and then give me Wiggins and Draymond. It's odd. It's quirky, but I think Draymond and Kyle are going to work great together. Those are two of the weirdest passer / initiators. It's going to work. They just need some shot makers to go with it. Like they need Draymond to shoot the 3 ball like he did last year.
It's going to be a little bit like those bench units that they used to run out there when it would be Looney and Draymond.
Yeah.
Only it's going to be Kyle Anderson and Draymond. And so, they'll be running a lot of like get actions at the elbow. They'll have to have these shooters moving around. Those 2 on the court, it's going to have to be Buddy Hield. I mean, ideally, it would be Steph Curry as the street sweeper makes his appearance, his weekly appearance. I don't know. I think the Warriors definitely got butter.
Yeah.
It's just, is it enough?
We are zagging. And maybe we're predictably zagging because I have such an affinity towards Melton and Anderson. My offseason take was just like, these are 2 of the best available guys that are gettable for cheap. Yeah. They will make your team better no matter what.
With Buddy Hield.
And I think Buddy Hield coming in just to make shots, even if Buddy Hield doesn't play.
Yeah. And
maybe some of those minutes are going to Gary Payton 2 or Moses Moody actually gets in the game. Like Lindy Waters 3 is not terrible. I don't think.
No, he can play.
No. Like they have
people are acting like
so
Buddy
many
Hield.
options.
I don't know, man. I think that people don't realize how good of a shooter Buddy Hield is.
Yeah.
Because he had last year, I mean, he was great in Indy, and then it didn't work in Philly for some reason, even though it should have been perfect.
Yeah.
But that guy is a knockdown.
There are obviously red flags about the guy. It's like he's this best shooter who teams don't want. So there's something there. Of course, my buddy John Burr hates him, thinks he's one of the worst players in the NBA. He's always like, every time a team gets him, it's wrong. And I trust John's opinion on that, but he's not necessary. It is just the question now for the Warriors. It is weirdly, it's offense, but defense, I think they're going to be awesome. I think they're going to be great at rebounding. And then I trust Steph. I trust the magic of Steph and these other workable role players to be butter. So, I think we did it.
We did it.
We say the Warriors are butter. We say the Kings are butter. We agree the Lakers are just slightly Parkay. We think the Suns actually slightly butter, and then the Clippers are clearly Parkay. Let's wrap up with a single listener submitted question, Dave. This is the croissant questioner.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Bobby Payton asks, this is a very important question, Dave. What should be the federally mandated minimum prize for a fan hitting a half-court shot at halftime?
Feels like 10,000.
Oh, it's way too low.
Okay, only because they're rich, but half-court shot.
If you're at Dave, I believe Bobby said it. If you're at an NBA game and somebody makes the half-court shot and they're like, "Hey, you just won 10 grand," I'm offended. You think that's enough? I'm offended.
I do think that's enough.
Maybe a car. I feel like minimum should be a car, and you can't buy a car for 10 grand.
But a half-court shot is, I don't know. The 3/4 court shot, that they used to do back in Chicago back in the day.
Yeah.
Now that's a car. 3/4 court, that's a car.
3/4 court.
Half court, you can hit that every day, Keith.
Quarter
You
mil
can hit
for a
5 in a
3/4
row from half court. You could. Yes, you could.
No, I've never hit 5 in a row from half court in my life.
You could though. You couldn't from 3/4.
I just
don't think the degree of difficulty on a half court shot. Maybe I've just spent too much time in the gym.
Maybe so. Well, going back to Bobby's question, first of all, I don't believe in federal mandates.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Once you mandate something, the crazy people start bucking that against it.
Yeah.
You can't. That's the risk. You can't mandate anything. But I do think
they're gonna be teams giving out AR-15s for the half court shot.
Yeah, you can't federally mandate anything.
Yeah.
You gotta pay off your social media influencers to tell them why half court shots are good and why you should pay money for them. I feel like 50 grand minimum. What's the least we've ever seen?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there like a 500 somewhere? 500 bucks?
Oh, I guarantee there for sure is some. Yeah, it's probably like the Celtics.
Maybe 25. All right. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm listening. I mean, 10 grand's a big deal. You win 10 grand. That's a ton of money. Big
ton of money. Especially if you didn't expect it. If I was like, hey Keith, here's $10,000. What was the famous Michael Jordan?
Was it $1 million?
It was $1 million, right? 3/4 court.
No, that was just a half court shot.
Was it?
Yeah. I'm now doing Michael Jordan half court shot prize. Yeah, it was $1 million. That was $1 million one. I'm back on it. 10 grand's embarrassing. If you go to an NBA game, it should at least 50.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I would ever do.
All right. Thank you, Bobby, for the question. If you want your question answered on air, you have to become a Patreon supporter. Do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join the Patreon, you can also get access to our listener Slack channel. You can talk with me about whatever topic you want. Also with the other listeners, there are channels for basically everything. We got a politics channel. We got a movie channel. We got a Grizzlies channel. We got a Timberwolves channel. We got a health channel. Maybe they'll help you out with your need for finding non-meat alternatives. Also, if you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to a monthly bonus episode. Also, you can play fantasy basketball with me and other listeners when the time comes. I'll probably drop the fantasy basketball sign up in the next week, I would guess. So if you want to support the show, do that.
So close.
Patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. And with that, I think we did it, Dave. Any final, who wins this Pacific Division?
It's tough because the Clippers fallen off.
Fall off, right? Yeah, they're going to be last, right?
Probably. But then the other thing is, man, Steph, KD, they're both 36. Like LeBron is 40. I don't know. Like Sacramento stuff could just not work.
Yeah, we mentioned our excitement over Sacramento.
Yeah,
but their math problem is wrong because they're adding more 2-point shots.
Yeah. Which
is not what you're supposed to be doing.
And less defense.
In the year of our Lord 2024, 2025, you're supposed to be adding more 3-point shots.
You know what, man? Go out on a limb here.
Yep.
I think the Warriors are going to win the Pacific Division.
You can get good odds.
God,
I think regular season, I think Suns, I would pick Suns first. I would pick Kings, I think second for the regular season. I don't know if that translates for either team in the postseason, but it's as every division it's basically going to come down to injuries. Like there are some, of course, where there's just far superior talent on some teams, but this one is so tight where it's just going to be like what team got the most games out of its best 2, 3, 4 players.
Literally.
I mean, one reason I like the Warriors is outside of Steph and Draymond, they now have tons of depth to withstand any amount of injuries. Like, again, we keep not mentioning Gary Payton too, but like he might be their best perimeter defender on a team that has Kyle and DeAnthony Melton. Like the guy's amazing. I'm excited to see what they work out there. Anyways, Dave, good job as always. Listeners, you guys are the best. Thanks for listening. And remember, breakfast is the most important thing.
Yeah, now never apologize for being G&G. Fair break, man. You understand?
I will remember